welcome to Wetpixel Live. My name's Adam Hanlon, I'm the editor of Wetpixel, and I'm joined today by a regular contributor, Alex Mustard. Hi, Alex.
Hi, Adam.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good, thanks. You can see from my suntan, I've been away.
Yeah.
I've been away just for a family, or visiting family in Italy, in Sardinia, which was very nice. Sadly, I didn't get underwater because on arrival there, or kind of on my first night there, I trapped a nerve in my neck. You might see my head's not quite on straight. So I'm in quite a lot of pain and got a bit of lack of mobility. The drugs are slowly beginning to work. So if I fidget around, it's because of that.
Oh, well, I hope you feel better soon, Alex. Bad backs are grim. They're terrible. They do.
Actually, this one's really bad because the two places it hurts is I'm okay kind of walking around and during the day, but lying down it's really painful, so I can't sleep well. Yeah. And the same goes for in the water. So I can't go swimming or diving without pain, which is very frustrating.
Very incapacitating.
Yeah.
What Alex and I thought we might chat about in this episode is we might chat about the advantages and the pitfalls of buying used underwater photography equipment, and kind of specifically really talking about housing systems, although to be fair we will talk about some of the other stuff as well. And I know one of the things that Alex and I agree on is that the buyer obviously needs to be very careful. So possibly our first port of call is buyer beware. And there's lots of sides to this. But obviously the first side is to know what you're buying. So I think in many ways you need to do a bit of research to find out lots of things about a potential sale. And those would involve obviously who you're buying from, and also is the equipment that you're buying, is it actually suitable for what you want it to do? And I think that's a good place to start. What's your thoughts on the buyer beware bit, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, I would say is buy from people you know. I think it works very well. Yeah. I've bought quite a lot of stuff secondhand down the years, and I've sold stuff, but I generally don't want to ship overseas, and I generally don't buy much from overseas. That way, if there's anything really goes wrong, you can sort it out face to face if it really comes to that. That said, I don't think we want to overstress these problems. I mean, I know on Wetpixel we've always had a long-running buyer feedback thing, which is a really great way of knowing someone's a really good person, and obviously things like eBay also have buyer ratings and things, so you're buying from someone who's very reliable. So I wouldn't get overly concerned about that, because I do think the second-hand opportunities for underwater camera gear are really, really valuable for people, particularly when you're starting out, because there's no getting away from it. Underwater photography gear, is chronically expensive. I think that's why I'm on this funny angle. It's because I'm trying to carry that heavy wallet around with me all the time, which I need to buy the gear.
Not the heavy housing. I mean, the other thing that obviously underwater photography gear is sadly not a great investment. Otherwise, I'd be much wealthier than I am, because there's quite a lot of demand on the newest and latest and greatest gear. But actually, once a housing system is 2 to 3 years old, it's worth a fraction of what it was new. And particularly by the time you get 6 to 7 years old, whilst that's a problem for people that have the latest and greatest, for those wanting to buy into the activity, a 3-year-old camera is still a really good camera. Arguably, a 6 to 7-year-old camera is still a really good camera. So there are really good opportunities for getting very high performance at very limited on a quite a limited budget.
I think that fall off in value is really driven by the type of market it is. Yeah. That the majority of the underwater photography market is driven by people's hobby. Yeah. People enjoy spending their money on their hobbies. Yeah. And they enjoy the pleasure of shooting top quality latest gear. Yeah. There's a real pleasure in owning and using that equipment. Yeah. And as a result, people don't want to use gear from 3-5 years ago, even though it's still incredibly capable. Yeah. Actually, I was just thinking this magazine arrived while I was away, and it's just a latest issue of a French magazine. Bonjour. But this picture here I took more than 10 years ago. It's I took it as a horizontal picture, and it's cropped quite a lot to fit on the cover. Yeah. But it's absolutely razor sharp. I'm trying to hold it in the right place so you can see it.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
It's absolutely razor sharp, and it looks incredible. And it's probably taken with a 12 megapixel D700 or D3 or something.
Yeah.
And I think if you said to me now, you can go and shoot a D700 or a D3, I'd be like, oh no way.
Yeah.
I'd have to throw the pictures away afterwards.
Yeah.
And actually, it's a reminder that those old cameras have incredible image quality.
Yeah.
And I still sell loads and loads of pictures from those older cameras.
Yeah.
So it's not, and that's this, that's the current issue, of that particular magazine, using that old picture. So the old cameras don't stop working. It's just people stop wanting to use them.
Yeah.
And as a result, they'd rather use other cameras. And as a result, it's very much a buyer's market.
Yeah.
I think a few things I would take into it is, if you are looking to buy secondhand into sort of the higher end areas, is don't go in with too many preconceptions. I think if you think, right, it absolutely must be this particular camera model, you can end up sort of not being able to find exactly the right combination and missing out on an amazing deal because someone wants to offload some gear in order to buy some new gear.
Yeah.
And quite often underwater photographers will sell their housing, but they'll also sell the camera too.
Yeah.
And if you're going, it must be a housing for a Canon 7D Mark I, and someone's there going, well, I'm getting rid of my 7D Mark II for peanuts. You're going, oh, well, it's no use to me. So I think it makes a lot of sense to go into it looking for a particular, with a very open mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
But do that. Sorry, as you were saying, do that research first so that when you see these good deals, whether this is a camera that's going to work for you or not.
And whether it's a good deal. Yeah, absolutely. Alex kindly mentioned the Wetpixel classifieds, and on the Wetpixel forums, the classifieds have been going back for a long time. And they are a very effective and largely very safe way of buying and selling equipment, in that obviously the Wetpixel community is relatively small. And so it's a good place to go if you are browsing for equipment. It's worth mentioning that in order to be active in that part of the forum, Wetpixel, you need to have made 3 posts in any of the other forums. And in part, this is to try and somewhat restrict access to classifieds forums to make it as safe as possible for people. So bear in mind that if you're new on the Wetpixel forums, you'll need to make a few posts elsewhere. And Wetpixel is a community, and generally, sharing your experience and your knowledge through the forum is a good thing. So this is the opportunity to do that, but also would then give you access to the classifieds forum. In terms of any secondhand sale, I can't stress this enough. Be very, very careful at the handover of money. That tends to be where it goes wrong. Things like PayPal, bank transfers, there's so many different ways of getting money, but make sure you're completely comfortable with the fact that either the item's for sale or you're going to get the money. You've got the money for the item before you dispatch it, whichever way around. So you need to employ a bit of due diligence on this. That's where it goes wrong. Once the money's handed over, it's very hard to get it back. And once the housing's in the post, it's very hard to get it back. So in both cases, that's what you've really, and I mean, the same applies to the Wetpixel forum as it would with any other used venue. Although in general, my experience with the Wetpixel forum is that it is a very kind of very safe and trustworthy way of doing business. But yeah,
I think the majority of these things are. I think it really is. It's 99% of secondhand camera gear sales go perfectly for everyone involved.
Yeah.
I think we just, while promoting them, it's important we make sure people are aware of potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
I would say definitely use those more trustworthy forums like the Wetpixel one. I think UWP magazine has a really good classified section for the big purchases, and maybe be slightly more cautious, and then you can maybe take a few more risks for some of the smaller purchases, and maybe use some of the Facebook groups where people are selling old secondhand camera gear and that, or secondhand dive gear and things online. I think one factor that is, I think, really important though when you're doing the sums is it can often be very easy to buy cameras and housing secondhand. But a lot of the other accessories are accessories that people are keeping long term. Lenses, ports, strobes, viewfinders. Those are things that people often are moving from one housing onto the next one.
Mm.
And those are much harder to find secondhand and often have quite high values secondhand.
Yeah.
And so, just because you can get, what feels like the majority of the gear relatively cheaply,
those last few bits,
you need to make sure you budget for those accessories.
Sure.
Because they can add up to a lot of money. And if you spend all your budget to get into this housing, and then you're at a housing without ports, without lenses, without strobe arms, without strobes,
Yep.
you're not going to do a lot of underwater photography.
Yep.
So, and those things can be much harder to find secondhand.
Yeah, I think the other thing to bear in mind when you're buying is that for most photographers, we don't have enough money to be able to switch systems particularly often. And bear in mind that although there are adapter things available in general, once you've bought into a specific manufacturer's port system, for example, you will tend, by definition, to probably stick with that port system simply because that avoids you constantly having to switch ports as well. So again, you're given a choice between different systems. It's worth considering that when the housing choice is probably a longer term choice, the camera itself, or the housing system choice is probably a longer term choice. The camera will probably date, and you'll probably want to sell it on relatively quickly, but you're probably going to be stuck in that port system indefinitely. So make sure that you're comfortable with that when you do it. And certainly, when we start talking about things like viewfinders, magnified viewfinders, now I appreciate for on a budget, these may well be the kind of things that you wouldn't be considering right at the beginning, but they are, again, there are adapters available, but typically they work best with the systems that they're actually designed to work with. So just be aware of that when you're buying into it. Those are probably slightly longer term purchases.
I would say definitely so for lenses.
Yes.
If you get into Canon or you get into Nikon or you get into Sony, you're likely to be staying, or Olympus, you're likely to be staying in those areas.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the other stuff though it is important to stress that it is quite easy to get adapters for things.
It is, yeah.
I mean, actually, this housing behind me here, I've got a Subaru housing with a Nauticam viewfinder stuck on the back. It's not difficult to to make those adapters. And port adapters, again, if you've got a load of ports from one housing manufacturer, you only then need one adapter to be able to change them over.
Yeah, there we have. That's a Saga adapter for once adapts my CCAM housings to use WACP. So
Saga's a great company for finding these.
Yeah,
these adapters. Actually, I quite routinely travel with both. Ones to be able to adapt my ports to other people's housings, and an adapter to adapt their ports to mine, because they're not very heavy and they're great accessories to take on a trip that can save you should you have some problems.
Yeah. They're kind of...
I think I have been both a buyer of gear and a seller of gear, and I know, Adam, actually, that you are selling, I think, a couple of housings at the moment, which is, I'm sure, nothing to do with the reason why we're having this conversation. And you can't trust him. Don't buy his What are you selling?
So, well, I've got a Nauticam D850 housing, and I've got a CCAM D810 housing. The D810 housing, obviously, I'm not shooting D810 anymore. And my Nauticam housing, I've got a CCAM housing as well. So rather than have two housings, I'm selling the Nauticam. So
those are both pretty contemporary and very, very capable. Both really nice cameras, actually.
Yeah,
I really like the D810, and I shoot a D850 myself. So they're both really nice cameras. I think the one thing that's quite hard as a seller to get round, and I say this again, knowing Adam's selling cameras, is you remember how much money you spent relatively recently on those bits of gear.
Yeah. And
actually, the market, the D850 one's a little different, but certainly the D810, it's amazing how few people will want to shoot a D810 now that there's a D850 out there. And suddenly this thing that, you looked at the engineering and said, wow, I can understand why this cost me so many zeros to buy. And then 2 years later, it still looks the same, and it's worth so much less because no one wants to shoot it. And which is, I think, a hard thing as a seller to get your head around.
Yeah, I think you just have to accept it as part of the cost. And certainly, in my particular case, I'm fortunate in that I get to try lots of different gear. It's part of the job, and oftentimes that does involve buying and selling stuff. So the manufacturers are very good to me and do help out a lot, and I'm very grateful for their assistance. But sometimes if I want to get a particular camera in the water quickly, I've got to reach out to whoever's got that housing and buy one. And that goes to the territory really. So make sure you've got Adam on speed dial if you want to get secondhand gear. He's the guy to get it from. I think the final thing I'd like to talk about when it comes to gear is servicing. Yeah.
And I think particularly if you're buying, and I'm talking particularly housings really, more so than accessories. If you're buying a housing, chances are, unless it's from Adam, it's been sitting around unused for quite a while, and someone suddenly decided, I love this thing, but I'm not really getting the time to use it anymore. I'm going to sell it on. And a housing that hasn't been used a lot is likely to be the least reliable housing out there. that's when all the O-rings start to perish, start to get, And so what I would say, if you are buying a housing, do consider very strongly budgeting to get it serviced, and either use that fact to maybe knock the seller down a bit and say, well, has it been serviced recently? No. Okay, well, I'm going to have to spend, a couple of hundred getting this serviced by someone, so I'd like some reduction in the price. Or say to them, would you consider having it serviced before selling it to me, so that I know I'm buying something that's completely reliable?
Yeah, I agree.
And I think, but it's well worth keeping that in mind as well. And certainly the last housing I sold was a Nauticam housing. I sold it here in the UK to a technical diver who wanted it. And before selling it, I chose to get that serviced.
Yeah.
And that was really because I wanted to sell him something saying, this is freshly serviced.
Yeah.
Yes, I've used it and I dive a lot and I've shot a lot, but this is complete, this has been serviced, checked by the manufacturer, and it's a really, really good to go. And that was really nice for him. And he shot it and had a really great time with that housing, and then ended up upgrading to a new Nauticam housing after that. So so.
I think that's, and in line with that as well, obviously we're talking to a global audience here, so bear in mind that it may be easier for the person, it may or may not be the person selling to get it serviced and then ship it on to you, or vice versa. So factor that in as well. Geography plays a part. I know most of the housing manufacturers do have dealers or service centres located in most parts of the world, but it may be part of the deal. Make sure you can get it serviced locally. That's great. I think we've given some great food for thought there, Alex. Have you got anything for sale?
Pictures. Yeah, I'm a photographer. We earn some money, so selling to magazines. No, not really. But I guess hopefully in the future I'll have some workshops for sale when we're able to start traveling more freely again.
Yeah.
But no, I'm not. No, I have to say I'm a bit of a hoarder, as you can see from like the Nikonos RSs and things on the shelves. I kind of like my old housings, and I've sold relatively few of them down the years. I've only sold them when really financially I need them.
Yeah.
I did try and have a little bit of a one-in, one-out policy to stop my house overflowing with gear, but I've managed to get away with it without having to do that for a while. But yeah, I know my wife doesn't watch these, so I can
one in, one out. Yeah, wouldn't work at my house, sadly. Anyway, right. Thank you very much, Alex. And thank you all for watching. I'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, which is Inon, or Inon if you're based in the States. And please add comments and suggestions about this in the comment section below. Feel free to like the video if you enjoyed it, and feel free to add any suggestions for future episodes, like much the same as this one was. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing you soon.